Welcome to Hire Power, the show where we cut through the noise and get real about hiring. I'm Kim Frost, founder of Frost Connections, and after 25 plus years in the search industry, I've seen what works and what absolutely doesn't. If you're a founder, CEO, VP, or HR leader who's tired of bad hires and ready to build a team that actually fits your culture and vision, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Higher Power. I'm Kim Frost, and I'm sitting down this afternoon with my Diet Coke and 6 limes. And today we're going to talk about you as a leader leading when you don't agree with your CEO or executive team. Now, most leaders experience something like this in their career, but nobody wants to admit it out loud. So what do you do when you don't agree with the direction of your CEO? Not a small disagreement. I'm talking about real tension, such as cost cuts, restructuring, shifting priorities. Those may help in the short term, but you know in your gut, they could damage the business in the long term. And you're sitting there thinking, are we trading tomorrow for today? Here's the reality. As a leader, your job is not to be defiant, but it's also not to be completely compliant. That's, after all, why you are in a leadership position. Knowing that line between when you fall in line and when to challenge. Think of your role as a steward, the steward of the business, steward of your people. You're responsible for protecting the future of the business while executing in the present. And that's a really different mindset because the question is not, do I follow my CEO's direction? The question really becomes, how do I execute this without destroying what makes this company valuable in the long term? So let's take a very real world example, which unfortunately I've seen too often. I know exactly what the outcome will be. The executive team is making short-term decisions to satisfy shareholders. We need to increase margins, reduce costs, hit our numbers for the quarter. That sounds reasonable, right? Until you take a closer look. So what happens? What gets cut? Recruiting and HR, L&D, and R&D. And these are the very function that drive innovation, capability, and future growth. Now you're in the middle. You understand the pressure from the top, but you also see the downstream impact on your team, your customers, and your long-term performance. This is where leadership really gets tested because it's easy to lead when you agree. It's so much harder to lead when you don't. And the latest research showing right now with AI is what is really going to drive and lead your company to success, to stay the leaders. Number one, customer service. So how can you possibly maintain that customer service if you're eliminating those functions we just talked about? So what do? First off, you don't fight the system. You learn how to influence inside of it. So let's break this down. First, translate long-term risk into short-term proof. If you walk into a room and say, this is going to hurt us long-term, you've already lost. Because most executive decisions are made in short-term cycles. So you have to meet them there. Translate that long-term impact into short-term evidence. Instead of saying, cutting recruiting will hurt us in the future, reframe it. Here's how this will impact our ability to hit next quarter's target. Here's what's happening to time to fill and revenue per employee in the next 90 days. Here's the cost
if we delay hiring right now? You're not changing the message, you're changing the language, and that's influence. The second thing you can do, influence from alignment, not emotion. This is where a lot of leaders get it wrong. They argue from their perspective. That's not how decisions get made at the executive level. You need to anchor your position in what they care about. And what is it? Investor confidence, customer outcomes, strategic priorities. So ask yourself, how does my concern connect to what matters to them? Then lead with that. Not your opinion, not your frustration, your alignment. The third thing, be selective about where you spend your energy. Not every room matters. Not every fight needs to be fought. Not every opinion carries weight. What you need to do is you need to identify who actually influences the decision and focus there. Pull in people who shape enterprise outcomes, build a different, valuable perspective that have credibility in the room. This isn't about consensus, it's about precision. The fourth thing you can do, time your influence. Timing matters more than most of us think. If you're trying to influence after a decision is made, you're too late. The real work happens before planning cycles, before budgets are locked, before narratives are set. Ask yourself, where are the real decision moments and how do I show up before them? That's how you're going to get ahead of decisions instead of reacting to them. Another thing you can do, connect the dots across the business. Great leaders don't argue in silos, they connect everything. If a decision impacts your department, fine, but that's not enough. You need to show how it impacts customers, how it impacts revenue, how it impacts the investor story. Make it bigger than your team because the moment it becomes enterprise wide, people pay attention. Lastly, stay visible, steady, and data driven. This is not a one time conversation, it is ongoing. Unfortunately, probably too much longer than you'd like to invest. But you need to consistently share data, show progress, highlight risks, and reinforce what's working. And do it in a way that keeps people aligned, not defensive. Data builds credibility, but narrative builds conviction, and you need both. So let's talk about talent because this is where it gets real. When companies start cutting, the first things to go are often, as I mentioned, recruiting, L&D, R&D. Anything not seen as immediate. And yet these are the exact functions that protect your future and ideally set you apart from your competitors. If you're leading one of those areas, you have to make the invisible visible. You have to demonstrate what happens if we stop building capacity, what happens if we slow down hiring, what happens if we pause innovation. Because preserving the skills, systems, and culture that create value, that's your insurance policy against future volatility. And that is actually what one of my clients did. He was hired for an organization to be their CIO/CTO. And the first mandate for them was guess what? Cut staff. We have to freeze recruiting and start eliminating positions. But what he was able to do was build that story, show the data, influence from alignment. He was visible, absolutely steady. And what happened? They did not have to cut any positions, and they actually had to hire more positions because of this. He was able to prove the case and show value and actually show where the drain on cost was coming from. But the hard truth, it's a lot of work. This is where your influence, storytelling, credibility, trust, they all get tested. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Not every leadership team wants to hear it. You can do everything right, frame it well, bring the data, align the priorities, and still not get agreement. So you have to ask yourself, does this organization's vision align with how I believe value is created? Because at some point, leadership is not just about execution, it's about conviction. The most effective leaders are not just operators, they're stewards of their team, of their business, of the future. And sometimes that means executing a strategy you don't fully agree with, while quietly, consistently, and strategically protecting what will matter most later. If you're navigating this right now and want a more structured way to approach it, how to influence, position, and protect your talent strategy without creating friction, let's connect. I can walk you through it.
That's it for this episode of Higher Power. If you're ready to hire smarter, connect with me at frostconnections.com or at LinkedIn at Kim Frost. And if you've got something to say about today's episode, follow the show and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, hire smart, lead better, and remember, how you hire is who you become. See you next week. No fluff, just better hires.